watching KTN Sunrise Live. Today is the 18th of March 2013. I'm Joy Doreen Bira, and in this part of the show, we do speak to guests. And today we're asking you, what do you think should be top on the agenda for the new government? What do you think should be top on the agenda for the new government? That is our question of the day that's running right on your screen. Send us an SMS or text message on what your thoughts are on what should be top on the new government's agenda. That is to 8040, and we will be going through some of your SMSs during as well as at the end of the show. And well, we are honored to be joined by Professor who is here to actually talk to us quite about the priority on education. That is Professor Nyaga Kindiki, who is the Professor of International Education Management and Policy Analysis, Moi University. It's an honor to have you in studio. Good morning.
Morning to you.
How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Yes, you had a good night, good weekend. Did you vote?
Yes, I did.
Did you vote for the right people who are going to implement
yes, I did.
good education policies?
Yes, yeah.
Well, let's talk about the education of Kenya. To start with, I don't know what you think about the education. A system that is in a way pre-colonial and post-colonial up to today.
What I could say here is that if you look at the colonialists and the education we inherited from them, much of the curriculum and the context of the teaching and offering that education was based on in their context. And every situation you find it changes depending on the needs of the people and the needs of the context. If you look at the population of Kenya in 1963 when we got the independence, was completely different from what we have today.
Right.
And the needs of the 1963 cannot be the same as the needs of 2013. And therefore, I think it's from the people themselves that they drive what they would like to see in the economy. And the relevance of the education will depend on the needs. So it must be need-based kind of education system, because the population and the needs of those days, the colonial time, have changed. Therefore, education must change with time. And if it doesn't change with the time, then you find that it is not going to be relevant. If you look at education system around the world and the global perspective, you find many countries now are, trying to contextualize education, and the policies are tied to the needs of the people. And the people themselves will require certain kind of skills and knowledge, which they give as input in the economy of any country. Right. And therefore, you find the needs of the 2013 and beyond are completely new. That's why people, if you look in the 10 years ago, they have been, clamoring for the change and for the change. And it's a second time, that is on the public policy level, where they would like to have a new constitution. And now we have a new constitution. And since we have a new constitution, we need to have education system which is in line with the new constitution and which is relevant to the needs of the people. People are not asking for the new constitution just to have a book to read and a policy to look at, but it must be contextualized and be relevant. And as I said before, is that education is a very important tool to social mobility. It sorts out people to various categories in job market. And therefore, what I can say here is that education system and policies of education in this country must or should change with the time to make them relevant and to be contextualized, looking, of course, and comparing with the global context. If you look at developed countries and the developing countries like Kenya, you find that the developed countries have been able to liberalize education so that education can be accessible to as many people as possible, open opportunities for many people as possible. And in so doing, you are creating a society which is educating, a society that can be self-dependent, and not only depending on some people, maybe the colonial masters and what we inherited from them. And the psychology of the people will change with the time. And therefore, educated community and educated public will themselves even create jobs even for other people. So you find the education system in this country must work to that end of changing the public and changing people and helping people to meet their needs. And in this country, people are saying the government should do this, the government should do this. I think this is a kind of misplaced kind of understanding and the concept of the people. They're the people themselves who should start changing. And the only way the government can do is to enable them to arrive to that change. And therefore, I strongly believe that policies might change with the time, policies must, change in comparison with the global context,
right,
so that the education system and the education policies can be relevant and contextualized according to the people's needs. And I believe our society, for example, Kenyan society, we are on that move, that we are towards the level where we find that we should liberalize education, which the government, of course, has started doing so, by opening so many public universities. Recently, you see His Excellency, the President,
yes,
give quite a number of charters to many public universities now, and they're increasing in number. And I think that trend should continue. That is at high level, high-level education system. And then when you look at the secondary school level, you find there is this, these secondary schools that now they are opened in every constituency, in every small primary school. You find it attached with a day secondary school, and so forth. That is a way of expanding education and liberalizing education, so that as many people can get access to education. And you look in the lower primary or primary school level, you find at that level the government has also enabled this the free primary education, as opposed to subsidized free secondary education. So you find the government is doing something towards that effect, and in so doing, I think we are going to achieve a lot of development. If, for example, the new government come and then they take over those policies and try to expand, so that the opportunities can be expanded to as many people as possible,
right,
so that education is not confined to some kind of group of elite somewhere with high level of education, and yet it's yes, that's it, and it went in the gap.
Interesting. Well, in case you're watching us this morning, we are asking a question: what do you think should be prioritized when it comes to education? We're just trying to take the heat off all of this politics that we have been up to for the past few weeks, and now this time we'd like to specifically look at what should be top on the new government's agenda. And we are taking an insight into the education system. What do you think should be considered priority for the education system in Kenya? We're looking at rural Kenya as well as urban Kenya. And speaking of rural Kenya, we have a number of children out there in the rural areas. You can talk about the most of them who are affected, traveling long distances to access these learning facilities. And we're looking at a Kenya that is moving towards sweeping out all of that. But what do you think, from your analysis, what do you think is the way forward to educating the rural Kenyan to be able to cope with the global standards?
I think absolutely right, that development and education policies so much as favored people in the urban areas. And you find people have been migrating from rural to urban areas. Wherever there's an urban center, be it in a market or maybe a small town, or in the city like in Nairobi and so forth, you find many people would like their children to go to good schools, which are unfortunately situated within urban areas. But I think the new government should take a swift move so that we can educate and try to provide means and ways of offering affordable education, and so that as many rural children as possible can access education, so that they can propel the development to the next level.
Right. Now, you earlier talked about, looking at a Kenya that maybe is moving on past the colonial times. And let's talk about the education systems that we have had in Kenya so far. I think we have seen the 7-4-2-3 system, and now we are on to the 8-4-4 system. And still, a good number of experts are not satisfied with the education systems that we've had in Kenya, even with the current 8-4-4 system. And therefore, there is a debate going on that the education system should be changed. What are your thoughts towards that?
Well,
do you think the new government should consider that as a priority?
It should be, and I think it is important to look at changing education system for the sake of changing. Doesn't add any value to the country. But I do believe that the new government should look at the needs of the people, and again, the government has already initiated that process, and there's been a lot of talk of changing the system. What I do believe is that the system should change, because if we are talking about having reforms, the first reform is changing an education system, because there are some systems like, for example, the 8-4-4 education system, which did not provide really what the public wanted at the time of initiation, because I believe that they wanted to create Kenya to be a country which is self-reliant and in terms of their graduates by graduating at every level, and they wanted practical skills to be emphasized. And that went, didn't go very well because a lack of resources.
Right.
And for this reason, I think that's why I was saying that the changing a system without basically looking at what really that system will address is not a priority. But I think the priority is, having looked at what has been suggested to be changes in this country, then the new government should take up that matter and look at whether changing education system in Kenya from 84 to what has been suggested, whether really it is addressing the needs of Kenyans at every level. Because at the end of the day, what we would like to have and what we would like to see as a country is our graduates at all levels really entering the labor market. Are they being absorbed either in private sector or in public sector, whichever way? But when these graduates graduate at every level, are they being absorbed, and are they, creating wealth for the country? Are they contributing to the economy of the country?
Right.
If so, then the education policies will be in line with the changes that have been suggested.
Interesting. Now let's look at the unemployment levels we're having in the country so far. Among the youths, we're looking at 40% unemployment rates for the youth in Kenya at the moment. And if education is anything to go by, education is supposed to better the lives of youth in this country. But as far as we're seeing, we are actually seeing more unemployed youths who are job seeking rather than job creators. So how do we bridge the gap between job seeking and job creation in the education system?
I think it's a matter of mindset of the people, that the education that we have been having over the years has been training or emphasizing on white-collar jobs. But I think that should change with time, because if you look in the West, you find you don't just go to school to get education or to acquire education just to get a white-collar job. Education should open the mind of the people so that the expectation of the graduates are not matching with the jobs in the market. I think that's a problem in this country, that you are training to become maybe an officer who is in an office, sitting in an office and doing some clerical job somewhere, or administrative or manager, etc. But I think that should change, that education should not only provide the white-collar jobs, but should open opportunities, even for example in informal sectors, where people can even be innovative and creative. Because in education system that does not provide opportunities and freedom of people to think, then they will tend to think on, having a focused mind that we are getting certificates, degrees, so that we get a certain job. But I think that's why I'm calling it a mindset. And that should change with the time, so that our graduates, when they finish at these levels, they are prepared. And for us to bridge the gap of the 40% of unemployment is to have a curriculum that prepares young people just right from primary education to secondary and to universities, that you are not getting education just for you to maybe sit in a certain office, but it helps you to become somebody who is relevant in the community, who is relevant in the economy. In fact, most of educated people these days are going on the private sector. They want to be self-employed. Nobody wants to be employed there permanently and until you retire. They would like to work for some years and then start their private business. And may I tell you, if you start a private business, for example, with maybe a university degree, it will do better than just somebody who has just dropped in primary and started a business. I'm not saying that theirs cannot be as good as those with the degrees, but I'm saying the level and the competence and the skills and the knowledge at every level, it is an added value to somebody who is starting a private business or any other kind of business one wants to start.
Well, let's review the teachers as well, because if we're going to think of a new education system, let's also consider the teachers as well. Do you think the country has teachers who are ready to cope in case this education system was changed to what is being debated on as of today?
Yes, I do, because I do believe that in whatever situation in any country, there is need of the political will. Teachers are people who are, enlightened, they are trained, and they do their job well. But I do believe that if there is a political will and the government, through the Ministry of Education, will bring this issue and then train teachers, I'm sure our teachers will be ready to take up that matter and teach the young people at all levels, wherever the teachers employ, whether in primary, in secondary, in university, so that our youth can be relevant in our modern economy. But we need a political will. Yeah.
And in your view, let's look at the policy, the decision makers, that is maybe at the cabinet level, at the ministry level as well. How flexible do you think these policy makers are in terms of adjusting the education system to suit what the needs of Kenyans are right now?
Well, to some extent, I believe in the new constitution there will be a lot of flexibility. That's what I'm thinking, because previously you find that policies were tied to maybe central government and maybe the image of the presidency, but you find that now there is a lot of flexibility in the new constitution, where you have the executive, the judiciary, and the acting and the executive. They are given independent, freedom, to work independently. Recently, you found although there is contention about the president-elect, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, meeting all the heads of independent commissions, and I think to me that he promised them, if for example, before the case, this one in the Supreme Court, whichever way it will go, but he promised them, according to what we saw, that he is ready to work with them should he be declared the winner of the just concluded general elections. And that to me is a positive sign of showing flexibility, that these independent commissions will work independently. Likewise, from the cabinet level and the secretary level down, in the structure of education system, there will be a lot of devolution. Like in the county level, you find that the county level, they're able to make their decisions at that level. Right. Then it comes to parliament, then it comes to Senate. Even before it goes to the president, there are so many, areas where these policies are discussed, and people will give the ideas at various levels. Even before it reaches the presidency, you find that such policies will be very useful, they will be relevant to the country, and I believe we are towards that end. Although it is too early to say, because, as I said, we need a lot of political will, that whoever becomes the president of this country and the new government that we are preparing to have, it should have a lot of, to give different sectors freedom to work. For example, if the president should give the cabinet secretary enough time to work and freedom to be flexible enough to make decisions and policies at that level with less interference. And it will go down to the lower levels in the education system.
Well put. We're speaking to a professor here. He actually is a specialist in regard to international education management and policy analysis, and that is Professor Nyaga Kindiki, who is from Moi University. We're welcoming your thoughts towards priority on the new government's agenda, and specifically looking at the education system. What do you think should be done to make sure every Kenyan is entitled to a good education? If we're going to go by the Constitution, or if the new Constitution is anything to go by, what do you think a Kenyan child with a good education should have priority? Send those SMSs to 8040 and we'll be able to sample some of them. At this point in time, there's someone here who mentions corruption in the education sector. Let's talk about corruption in the education sector. As an analyst who has observed, education management, let me hear your side of the education corruption.
Well, that's a difficult subject to discuss at the moment with the time given. But what we are saying here is that there could be some corruption. I can't deny at several levels. But I think some of these issues about corruption have been exaggerated due to the fact of inheriting the colonial education system, which was highly structured, which didn't provide flexibility, as we have discussed before. And therefore, with the new constitution, I have a lot of confidence that there will be a lot of checks and balances, and decisions will not be made by one person. So to me, the corruption, in quote, that people may be tagging education, not only in the education system, it's in all sectors. And people have said Kenyans are corrupt. But this is a very general statement. Right. There's no evidence, there's no proof of that corruption. But in the image of the public, they do think that there's a lot of corruption because they don't know what is happening inside an organization.
Well, I would like to hear from you because that actually gives me a clouded idea of what exactly is going on in the education sector. But as an international education management and policy analyst, what do you think is going wrong with the education sector in Kenya as of today?
It is because education system has been highly centralized. And I was about to say that in any highly centralized system, you expect when one person is making a decision, people to complain of corruption, because highly centralized system encourages favoritism, nepotism, name any kind of ism that people have. And because we are human beings, at the end of the day, you'll find that the decisions one person will make will not favor the other person, and hence, that will be corruption. But since now many people are going to make decisions at various levels, that will be minimized. And again, you cannot eradicate corruption, but you can minimize to a very small level, because what could be corruption to you may be not corruption to me, because it is all matter of perception. It's the way people are being perceived. And therefore, to me as an analyst, is to say that there has been corruption because of the centralized system. But we are going to dismantle that in the new government because of various levels of structures, and therefore corruption will be minimized at a very low level.
Well, as far as we're concerned, I think we're seeing most of the devolved new positions, and we're seeing the new leaders who have been elected not exactly understanding what their duties are meant to entail. That is what we were discussing earlier with Dismas. So how is devolution going to help the education system or the education sector in the country, and also help push for better education policies at the decentralized level?
There are two things. First of all is they'll need a lot of training. You cannot, blame people of not performing because they are not trained. Therefore, the new government must put mechanism on training of the officials, especially at county levels. But I believe at all levels, even national level, because this is a new government altogether with a new constitution. Therefore, training is a priority of the new government, because they need to train people to empower them. That's the human resource. And secondly, the new government should consider people who are qualified. The issues of corruption has risen, as I said, because of high centralized system, which favors some people at some levels. Therefore, in a flexible and liberalized, government like this one of ours, where opportunities are open for as many people as possible, the government should go for the merit. That means the qualified people should be given jobs appropriate according to their qualification, and also issues of experience, so that you find it's not completely a new person who is taking a position. Somebody with maybe 2, 3 years or 5 years experience in some management level, then he can be deployed or employed to fit that position or which the government requires to be filled. And therefore, what I believe is that we need to go, for merit, for qualification, for experience. We need people who have the understanding of the job they are doing. Not somebody from a different area is given completely new area, and then you'll just be sitting in the desk there, and the desk just may be receiving people and doing very little in terms of providing services to the people. And therefore, the new government should take, issues of qualification and merit very seriously. And they can outsource this one from various levels, because people are there who are qualified.
When you talk about issues of qualification and merit, let's look at where exactly you think the problem could be. Is the problem at the policy or decision makers end, or it's at the service provision end? Because we're looking at teachers who are complaining of delivering services with little pay. And at the end of the day, we're also seeing decision makers on this other end saying that some of the teachers are not even qualified to do some of these jobs. So there's a kind of push and pull in between the education system. And if the new government is going to sort this out, where should they start?
Well, I think in one way, to a lesser extent, is the policy making level. Because we have had previously, of course, people in positions, and policies are made at parliament level, at other levels. But I think what I believe here is that the problem, the challenge we have in this country is the enforcement of the policy. And the enforcement level is what we call implementation level. So you could have a good policy and good policies which are well illustrated on paper, but if they are not translated into action, then those policies become meaningless. In our situation and in our context, Kenya, what I believe is that for us to give appropriate and specific services to our people that they need and they require. It is that we need to enforce policies, and that's where the service delivery comes in. So the issue of push and pull, of course, has arisen because when the policy makers, for example, the parliamentarians make policies, for example, for education or any other sector, it goes to the ministry, then down for implementation. You find there is a lot of strain between maybe the implementation stage and the policy making stage. Some of these things bring a lot of disconnect, a lot of discontent among people, and therefore people just give up and just say there's a lot of corruption because there is no enforcement. So my thinking and my suggestion is that the new government should take up the matter of enforcement of policy seriously so that the services can be delivered.
Okay. And I'm going to take you back to the rural education or educating a rural Kenyan. From the time a rural Kenyan is born, I'll just maybe picture a scenario in Kajiado or in Narok. Let's look at this child who's brought up in a pastoralist family or a pastor family. And at the end of the day, they're looking at getting a good education as well. And if the new government's policies are anything that the Kenyan should go by, then there should be something that is entailed in every setup, that there's this part of Kenya that has got a number of different cultural diversities, and therefore we're looking at an education that is going to suit every kind of Kenyan, that is Kenyans from different parts of the country. And in this case, I don't think the current education system is serving that, because if you cannot cope with the current education system, then you're going to be left out. And this has nothing to do with the people who are benefiting from the education system. It has everything to do with the policy makers as well as the decision makers. But how do we turn this around?
Well, I believe in this country, as we have seen before, is like the education system is favoring so much people in urban areas. People in the rural areas are left out basically because of resources. So I think the new government should consider and give special priority to disadvantaged areas by providing more resources, so that the resources which are found in schools and colleges and universities, of course they're in the urban areas, they should reflect also what is happening in the rural area. And the rural areas, for example, you have given an example of Kajiado or other areas which are disadvantaged. That child in that local school needs facilities like those ones of the child in Nairobi. You cannot just treat two citizens, with inequalities. One child has all the facilities and the other child does it have. And I think this is a problem where I see this, the policies are there of equal distribution of resources, but it has not been enforced. That's why we are coming in the new constitution and we are saying that the devolved government, which is going now closer to the people, should take into considerations of schools that are disadvantaged and areas that lack some facilities. It could be in terms of teachers, because a teacher is a resource, a main resource in the school. You find a primary school with 8 classes, you have only maybe 2 or 3 teachers. I think that there should be a balance of the teachers in urban areas and the rural areas, because when you talk of equality, you cannot sort equality in one way and then you don't provide in the other way. So if you are providing equality and equal opportunities of children in urban areas, I believe the government will take seriously, even when they are allocating resources at the national level. Now, there may be some counties that are disadvantaged, should give even more funds or more resources, so that when these counties receive these resources at the county level, the governors there and the leaders in that county will be able to distribute, so that it can trickle down to that child in that local school, so that we have the equal opportunities of all children of Kenya.
Now, there's the issue of job creation, and this is a very big problem in Kenya as well as in Africa. But the far that Kenya has come is that Kenya has come to be known as a very innovative country with young, positive energy that is trying as much as possible to, change the trends and also make sure that they appear in the global market. But this is actually clustered among the urban elite, and it is leaving out a good number of the young people in Kenya. And therefore, we are looking at a Kenya that is going to bridge this gap and make sure that at least we are looking at this innovativeness as well coming from the other ends of the country or the other parts of Kenya. And yet we are still seeing a number of obstacles. Which do you think are the biggest obstacles to improving Kenya's innovativeness across the continent?
Yeah, the first obstacle I would like to mention is about the issues to do with the funding. Mm-hmm. All issues will, go back to funding. If you underfund a certain sector, definitely even other, other things that they would like to do and the policies in that sector will be seriously affected. We have seen in the past, the government has given a lot of money, for example, in free primary education, mm-hmm. and subsidized secondary education, even in higher education. Mm-hmm. But as I said, the enforcement level is very weak in this country. So if these funds are not managed properly, then Kenya will face a serious problem in terms of innovation. For example, in the universities, you'll find that research is not well funded, so to speak. Mm-hmm. It is, of course, the government is doing something, right, but not to that level of providing maybe lecturers with enough finances so that they can do their research, because that's where innovation starts. Mm-hmm. Without maybe elites being innovative at that level, so that they can get knowledge, and that knowledge is taken back to the nation, so that the consumption of it will help the development of the country. So if there is underfunding at that level, you'll find there will be challenges in innovation. Mm-hmm. That is at the university level. But even in other levels of education system, be it in high school or in a primary school level, if the funding is weak, then you find that it will affect innovation. Mm-hmm. Apart from that, the government agencies that work very hard to help the country to go forward innovation. Right. So also if they are not well funded, if there is underfunding, again they will not be able to carry out their duties adequately. And I believe in the new government that is about to be formed in a time when maybe the Supreme Court decides mm-hmm. The way forward. Mm-hmm. We should be able to be thinking of taking innovation seriously, because there's no country ever in the world that has ever developed without innovation. People should be creative, and therefore people could have great ideas. And I believe Kenyans are brilliant people. We have great ideas, but you have no way of trying to sell that idea to the people, because mm-hmm. there is no empowerment. So to me, funding is critical. There could be other issues which I believe that can be sorted out within the context. Issues about the personnel, issues about making good policies, mm-hmm. governing the organizations. Right. And I think these things that can be done internally. But at the government level and the policy level, which is at the national level, if that empowerment is not taken seriously, you find these great ideas will just go to the grave. They don't go very far.
Well, do share with us your views about our discussion this morning. We are talking the education system, and what do you think the new government should consider as priority for, the education in Kenya? And we're looking at some of the obstacles as well that face the Kenyan education. It's always about literacy levels being low and also substantially lower in certain regions. But would like to hear from you on what exactly you think some of the solutions are and which areas you think should be prioritized when it comes to education. We are discussing what you think should be top priority on the new government's agenda, and we are giving special attention to education away from all the politics. And let's try to discuss some of the issues that we think could be forming the agenda for the times to come. And we'd like to hear from you as well on our SMS line, which is 8040. In case you're watching us online, you can also send us a tweet that is on Sunrise Live using the hashtag Sunrise Live, and we'll be able to get some of those tweets and have them aired right here. Some of them are actually streaming live on the screen, and in case you're able to send us an SMS, be sure to do that. Professor, I'd like to know from you, most children can, in the real Kenya, have got issues with maybe choosing of subjects and things like that at the lower levels of education. This actually goes up to the level of university, where courses are given to students and they're actually not interested in doing some of these courses, and at the end of the day it's still going to affect their work in the future. Well, that is why maybe to an extent we are having underperforming youths in the country at the moment, and there's got to be a solution to issues like this, because at the end of the day we are looking at educating a Kenyan citizen just for the sake of educating them, but they're not exactly interested in what they're doing. How do we solve that part of education?
Yeah, for a long time in this country, education system has been serving our colonial masters, as I said. It has been so colonial, so traditional, so conventional,
right,
that you find the curriculum itself it does not, expose children to what they like. But when a child goes to primary school, you are told what to learn and what to expect from the teacher, and the teacher is the source of all knowledge. And therefore the child is not given the opportunity also. The
teacher is always right.
Yes, it's always right. And the child is not given the opportunity also to say what they would like to learn.
Right.
Maybe I'm teaching mathematics, I'm teaching English, and maybe music. I tell children to sing. But if I don't ask them, do you like music? I just go to class and tell you must learn music today. And they just look at me on the subject that I'm trying to teach, and I don't give them opportunity also to speak up and say their views, or even the parents themselves, to give their input in the curriculum that is being offered in schools. And that will go right to the high school and even to universities. Like when you do your students do their form for exam, the KCSE exam, they pass, they are just admitted to any degree which they are funded. And you find even in these days, because I'll go back to what you are saying, children are not interested, but you find even these days when students are admitted, even in the university, some of them opt to go for parallel degree programs. They are admitted to do a BA in sociology. They say we don't want that. I'm going to do something else. That tells you the problem starts from primary school level, because children are given subjects to learn, and they're not given opportunity also to say whether they want to learn. I think there is this issue of the children's rights, which the government should emphasize, that children have also a right to say what they want to learn, and teachers also have a right to teach and to tell children what to learn. So it's a kind of dialogue, and the democracy must begin there. It's not at the top. But what has been happening over the years is a lot of emphasis at the national level, so that our image as Kenya will look like Britain, for example, where inherited our education system. So all things are okay. When a visitor comes to Nairobi, says all schools in Kenya are like this, goes to 1 or 2 schools in Nairobi, then they go back. So what the image when they take in Nairobi is like Kenya. And in fact, that's why Nairobi is even more famous than Kenya itself. And Kenya is the country and Nairobi is the capital. And then they say, I'm from Nairobi, Nairobi, Kenya, education is good. But you have not gone to the local area to see what children are experiencing. So I believe children should be exposed to the curriculum which they want, so that they can choose also what they want. If you find a child at that primary school level, or even secondary school level, is interested in certain subject, let's say singing, or science, could be mathematics, whatever kind of subject, the government should come with a solution starting from county level of trying to empower these children, because we are wasting a lot of talent. And the issue of illiteracy comes in there, because if I don't learn mathematics or English, for example, or geography, I'm not interested. Therefore, I'll drop from school. That is one of contributing factors of the school dropout, because I do not want to learn. I'm being forced to learn what I don't want. Supposing I was given something, a musical instrument to play, because that's what I like, I'll play that music to a very high level, by the way. And that will contribute to the economy of the country.
Right. I do understand where you're going with all of this, but then at the end of the day, let's look at how the grading system is going to be. If we're going to look at a student or a pupil who is not interested in learning numbers, or is not interested in geometry, or whatever it is, and then at the end of the day they've got this talent on the side, how is that going to compute to grading at the end of the day?
That's why there's I should say there have been a lot of concerns on the merit system, where we are grading schools' performance according to the examination performance. But I think the education should look at standards all around, because you cannot tie education, evaluate education and monitor education using one way of measurement. Because the measurement that has been used in this country so much is the performance measurement, where you are measuring a child performance on only academic output. So it will depend on what the child, scores at primary school, at secondary school, university, you can name it, on and on and on. But I think that system should change so that it can also accommodate other children who may not be measured through only academic performance. There are other performances, like maybe behavior, the intelligence of the child, and the liking of the child, and the choice of the child. That should be cumulative so that it can be taken as a whole child, a holistic education, not only performance. And I say education cannot be measured only on performance. You should also look at the content performance. What is the child learning? So that question is sometimes overlooked, and we only look at the grade. For example, when the KCPE exam results are released, or a KCSE exam, parents and the public and all of us, we don't even ask what did the child learn, but we ask what has the child scored. So we talk of the scoring, which is the performance, academic performance, kind of criteria of measuring the quality of education. But we are not looking at the holistic education. What did the child learn? That is the content, the content assessment of the child, the curriculum.
So as we wind up, if you were given a chance to transform the education sector or transform the education system of this country, what would you do? What would you start with? Just how would you go about it?
Well, that is challenging. But of course, the first thing you have to do is to consult, find what has been happening before, because that's where you begin before you make any changes. And then when you see what has been happening previously, see whether it is matching with the new constitution and the development agenda of the country, but you are looking at Vision 2030, and see whether it's also measuring with international goals of education and the entire development. And then we'll look at the policies which can be put in place to make changes. And of course, with a lot of consultation and with a lot of understanding and discussions at various levels. So to me, there are two things. One, consultation. Two, policy changes. And three, policy implementation. Because we are facing serious problem in enforcement of policies. I believe we have enough policies. They are there. But enforcement is the weakest point. And not many people are moving from the policy making level to enforcement level. I'll start from there.
The implementation
level is the problem.
Well, we have quite a number of tweets here, and we're having Collins Nyangoya, who is saying, is the free education a success since it was introduced? If yes, how? And if no, what's the way forward? And we're also having another here who is saying, a teacher who earns basic salary of 15,000 Kenya shillings cannot deliver. That's the priority. And this one is actually coming in from Meru Gitonga George, and we're also having one coming in here from Collins, who is saying, well, Collins is saying thanks for the good job. And we're having CKK or Kamau Charles on Twitter, who is saying equity is the priority. Let the resources be the same from Kilifi, Mandera, Nakuru, Nairobi and Kisumu. Well, there we go. And we also have one who is saying sack all the head teachers who have no degrees and lack technical know-how. Well, those are some of the views that are coming through our Twitter handle. And well, we do encourage you to continue the discussion on Twitter. Now, lastly, and really lastly, what are your final remarks when it comes to the education system? Who do you think, or what do you think should be really transformed, and what should be top on the agenda if we are going to improve the education system in the country as we wind up?
If we have to improve the education system in this country, first of all, as I said, we need to the new government need to consider first in its priority issues about merit and the qualification. You put places in place people who are qualified, so that people who are in various offices are people who have the knowledge of that particular office, and they can be able to execute services without serious challenges and close supervision, because there are people who know what they are doing. Secondly, we need people who have some experience and skills of that particular. So it's not only the qualification, but you need to have the skills and knowledge of handling that. And I believe, as to summarize, is to say that the policies which need to be enforced particularly is this issue of equity, because this issue of sharing of resources is what has made people really clamor for change in this country. And when you find that some areas are favored in terms of sharing of resources, then that will bring animosity, and it will discourage people, and people will lose hope in the new government. So my appeal is that we need to focus on policies that bring equity as a major change in this country in provision of resources. And we look into the end, the enforcement of that provision, so that all people can be treated equally.
Well, it was an honor having you in our studio this morning, Professor. We do appreciate the time taken and also the insights given in regard to the education system. Thank you so much, Professor. We do appreciate. Well, we've been speaking to Professor Nyaga Kindiki, who is the Professor of International Education Management and Policy Analysis at the Moi University, giving us his insights on what he thinks needs to be done in the education sector to ensure that we have a better Kenya, a more educated Kenya, more exposed Kenyan citizen, and at the end of the day, a more innovative Kenyan citizen. And well, thank you so much for your contributions through our Twitter handle as well, and as well as our SMS line. We do appreciate that. And we wish we had time for sport, but I think we're out of time now. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Joy Durimbira.